Greetings, ladies, gentlemen, and others. This is Jolly Scholar 888 with part 2 of my introduction to Ethereum. In part 1, I compared and contrasted Ethereum with the grandfather of all blockchains, Bitcoin. I covered the fundamental and critical changes that Ethereum brought into being. Bitcoin gave us the potential for a new kind of economic system, but Ethereum made that potential real. I covered the central role of the young Vitalik Buterin, and with that, my brief philosophical take on the role of the individual in human and social evolution. Here in part 2, I start off with a summary of the general categories of dApps, or decentralized applications, that I introduced and described in part 1. I then covered the bold new steps that Ethereum is taking towards improving its functionality and its ecosystem. Once again, Vitalik Buterin is proving to be a bold, risk-taking visionary. There's a lot at stake with these major changes. But the point of part 2 is also to emphasize that Ethereum made possible the proliferation of a seemingly endless array of different decentralized applications onto a single blockchain. And with that, the possibility of a completely new financial ecosystem with enormous implications for the entire world. Prior to Ethereum, this was simply not possible. But besides offering a brief introduction to the crypto phenomenon, for those who might know very little about it, my purpose in launching this series was to contextualize the crypto phenomenon within my interpretation of techno-anarchism. I see techno-anarchism as the acceleration of what I'm calling the Great Reversal that was first ignited by the American Revolution. To me, the shot heard around the world is still reverberating. I see blockchain technologies as an acceleration of techno-anarchism and techno-anarchism as a continuation of the Great American Experiment. Together, these forces constitute the unfolding Great Reversal, a reversal of thousands of years of social evolution towards greater and greater concentrations of power into smaller and smaller concentrations of ruling elites. The culmination of this trend is, of course, global socialism. So I hope that those of you who have watched the previous discussions in this series have benefited from them and will continue to benefit from Ethereum Part 2. From there, I will move on to discourse number 7, the altcoin explosion, and from there proceed to NFTs, gaming, the Metaverse, and more. So, on with Ethereum Part 2. So let's summarize the largest general categories of dApps operating on the Ethereum blockchain. The first is DeFi, decentralized finance. This is borrowing, lending, and complicated borrowing and lending and speculation even on tokens, speculation on kind of like what people do with the stock exchange. But they all fall under the category of DeFi. Then we have DEXs, DEX, that's decentralized exchanges. That's where you go to actually buy and sell cryptocurrencies, exchange them for different, even different assets like NFTs, but mostly for cryptocurrency exchanges. Then we have the launch platforms. These are, as we said, these are to fund and present to the public and get investments, get interest in new projects. Then we have the Decentralized Autonomous Organization, or the DAO. These are decentralized kind of little virtual machines of themselves, where communities come together and formulate an interaction. The community can have anything as an objective, as a purpose. But once the protocols are set and the rules are set, then the exchanges, the interactions between the different entities, they can't be compromised. You can't cheat, you can't lie, because anything will be thrown out. And again, to understand how things get thrown out, you have to understand how blockchains work. So imagine in your mind all of these different communities that are operating, and they could be all over the world. They could be people that never seen each other, but they've come together for a purpose. They established a decentralized autonomous organization, and it works. And they can trust each other because it's trustless. They're not really trusting each other. They're trusting the protocols. Then we have NFTs. We've talked a lot about them. And we have gaming. And of course, the Metaverse. And there are smaller categories and even new kinds of dApps being developed all the time. Now, but as the trilemma teaches us, it is still a matter of compromise. And Buterin had to make a number of decisions along the way. There has emerged some serious competition for Ethereum, and that competition has largely emerged to compensate for some of the issues that Ethereum has had to deal with. But in order to understand these problems, we need to look first at these 3 items: coins, tokens, gas fees. And then the fourth will be slippage, which is really it's attached to gas fees. Now, the ETH coin, ETH is to the Ethereum blockchain what Bitcoin is to the Bitcoin blockchain. How that works was covered in discussion number 2 of the series, Bitcoin Mechanics. The token, however, is the currency for a dApp, a decentralized application, or it can be the coin of a chain of any fundamental blockchain, in this case Ethereum. The fundamental blockchain is called the layer 1 chain. Again, this is Ethereum, while a subchain is called a layer 2. So imagine that you have the Ethereum blockchain, and then another chain, smaller one, well, maybe not, but another chain is created, another blockchain with its own protocols and its own network, and it's connected to function in tandem with Ethereum. In this case, as we will discuss, it's to take some of the load. In other words, they'll take some of the processes for a certain specific decentralized application, and they'll take a lot of the heavy lifting and put it onto the secondary, the layer 2 blockchain. Do that work and then feed the results back into the Ethereum blockchain. In the Ethereum ecosystem, Ethereum obviously is a layer 1. The token of any dApp or of a layer 2 blockchain functions only within the dApp or the subchain's protocols. These tokens function analogous to how the ETH coin functions to maintain the entire Ethereum blockchain, just as the Bitcoin monetizes the entire Bitcoin blockchain. The token covers the maintenance costs and the accruing of profits or value of a specific dApp or decentralized application, and comes into being or is minted as a function of that dApp. The token is a result of those operations. Again, just as the ETH coin functions for the Ethereum blockchain and the Bitcoin for the Bitcoin blockchain. So the token is to the dApp what the coin is to the blockchain. And so that's to differentiate between the two, so that when you come across a coin, you understand that that is, well, the token, the coinage, the currency of a major blockchain. Whereas when you're dealing with a token, you're dealing with the currency within a specific dApp. But since the specific dApp is functioning, in this case on the Ethereum blockchain, it is really a specialized function within the overall Ethereum blockchain, or virtual machine. It's virtual machine. The dApp is taking advantage of the immense processing power of Ethereum's virtual machine, the protocols, the security, the scalability. So the minted token is actually a derivative of the Ethereum coin, or the ETH. Even though it is specifically minted solely as a function of that particular application and has its own name, the token is still a derivative of the ETH coin. For example, the Aave token is a token minted by the lending and borrowing dApp called Aave. You can see it up there, AAVE. While the Metaverse called Decentraland mints a token called Mana. To redeem that token, that is, to turn that token into a liquidity that could then be used to convert it to either fiat or another token, traded with another token currency, it must be converted first into its Ethereum equivalent, of which the token is actually a derivative of in the first place. The ERC20 token and the ERC, the newer one, ERC721 tokens, were created exactly for that purpose. So any given token that is minted on a dApp that operates on the Ethereum blockchain is actually, regardless of its name, a derivative token of ETH. So it's either an ERC20 or an ERC721. It seems complicated, and it kind of is, but if you look at it like a system within a system, right? You have the large Ethereum system, and the ETH coin is the energy. It's what makes the whole thing work. So it's minted. It's a coin, like in a bank, right? It's the money. So the currency of the Ethereum blockchain is what runs the Ethereum blockchain. It's the value of the Ethereum blockchain. So you have smaller systems operating within the larger system. And these smaller systems then have to maintain themselves. They have to generate profit. They have to generate value so that they can sustain themselves. And they do that by minting their own token. But the token still works very similar to how ETH does, in the sense that if there's no processes going on, there's nothing minted, right? The minting is still a reflection of the value. Now, of course, it gets complicated because every single dApp has its own what they call tokenomics, how they go about distributing the tokens when they first come into being. And that's a complex subject right there. But you don't really have to understand that as much as understand that the decentralized applications within a larger system, a larger blockchain, these decentralized apps are systems within a system. And all the different systems are nonetheless still derivatives of the major blockchain. So whatever they're minting, whatever coins value it has, is still ultimately, because it's operating on the blockchain, a derivative of the currency of the major layer 1 blockchain. This again goes for the layer 2s. They're still derivatives of the major blockchain. The layer 2 is a derivative of the layer 1. So whatever its token is, and we'll talk about Polygon, and its token is called Matic. Now, you don't want to confuse the value of the token with the value of ETH, though, because that's not the case. ETH produces, or let's say Ethereum mints the ETH coin, and the ETH coin's value lies in the total ecosystem of the Ethereum blockchain. The value of the token is limited to the success or the failure, the progress of that particular system within the larger system. So it has its own value. That value is not to be attached directly with ETH, because it's not. However, it is a derivative. So if ETH, for instance, if Ethereum is doing really well and the blockchain is flourishing, usually the tokens, the subtokens, will be flourishing as well. It'll be kind of a lag in time, but they will flourish as well, because it means that many people, lots of transactions are going on the blockchain in general, and that should include them. However, if it's a terrible dApp, it might not. The Ethereum blockchain could be doing very well, and that token is just plummeting. At any rate, it's sort of complex, but it's very fascinating. So basically, all you need to know when talking about a token is to know the difference between a token and a coin. So the coin is the currency of the blockchain. A token is the currency of an application on that blockchain, a system within a system. So that's the token. What are gas fees? Recall the fees paid by user A when he sent Bitcoin to user B in my Bitcoin mechanics discussion. Those fees are what is now called generically gas fees. The cost of covering the computer power needed to put a transaction through the validation and verification process on the blockchain network. Ethereum is still at times somewhat slow. It can bottleneck due to the enormous number of transactions being processed at any given moment across the blockchain. Ethereum gas fees have always been relatively high. Consider the scale and complexity of those processes. But at high volume times, when those bottlenecks occur, they create gas fees that really, for many people, are prohibitive, especially for smaller amounts. The fees are charged, of course, in ETH, the coin of the Ethereum blockchain. So if you're not dealing with large amounts of money, making small transactions is oftentimes not really worth the cost. I know that sounds kind of problematic. Well, it is. This issue with Ethereum has been one of the major forces that has driven the rise of its competitors. So now we have to introduce the concept of slippage. That's the range of fee costs you are willing to tolerate to put a specific transaction through at a specific time. Your slippage settings, what you are willing to pay, will determine how long you have to wait. So the fees are even normally relatively high, but at times they can be, as I said, for many of us, prohibitive. The transactions for people with higher settings will be bumped up the queue, and those with lower slippage will have to wait. Sometimes the wait can be long. If you're trying to get in on a specific sale or event, you might miss it waiting for your transaction to go through. It depends on what you stand to gain or how much you want to get in on the ground floor of a project, or how much you want to, how badly you want a specific NFT. Anyway, you have to decide whether or not it's worth it. So is Ethereum working on this issue? Of course they are, and we'll get to that. But we have another issue with Ethereum, and that is the environmental issue. Proof of work requires immense computational power. So Ethereum has been under the same pressures from the same entities as Bitcoin has, as well as all the other industries that are not yet under the complete control of the tech oligarchies and the government. I personally feel that this environmental concern is it's a red herring. They went after Bitcoin. I spoke about that in the last video, right? China threw out the Bitcoin miners ostensibly because of the environment. Of course, they're the largest coal producers in the world. Well, I think them and Russia. But on the other hand, it's common knowledge that the Chinese government intends to create its own cryptocurrency. So obviously the environment had nothing to do with it. All right, so let's summarize the current issues with Ethereum. Gas fees, bottlenecks that then exacerbate the gas fees. Ethereum can be somewhat slow at times. We have the occasional security breaches, but not nearly as many as the average large bank or government for that matter. I mean, they cover it up, but they happen all the time. And Ethereum also, if there are breaches, they pay for it, and they're very few and far between. So compare this to the ease of fiat and banking and any fiat monetary transaction for the moment. All right, Ethereum cryptocurrencies are slower, clunkier, more complex. That's true. But then again, we've all had horrific experiences with the banks, right? Probably every single one of you has. I have. But for public adoption on a massive scale and for ease of making transactions within the fiat system, we have online banking, sending and receiving money, paying for things online. Think how easy it is to use PayPal. To set it up and to use it is easy. So the fiat system must be equaled or exceeded by crypto. Ethereum is getting there, but it still has a way to go. Here we have to be honest. Crypto is not for the faint of heart. There's a definite learning curve even now, though things are getting quicker, they're getting easier, smoother, but there's a learning curve. Complicated, can be frustrating. I think it's well worth it. I've had a great experience, but I've had moments of frustration. It gets complicated. You have to do some studying. I mean, it's not the kind of second nature thing that we do when we go to a bank or we go online and buy something. It's not, but it's getting there. So just be warned, it's a little daunting at first. So now I feel compelled to at least mention wallets. Crypto wallets are a pain in the posterior. The most well-known wallet is on the Ethereum blockchain. It's for the Ethereum blockchain. It works with others as well now, and it's called MetaMask. You can see it up there. What is a wallet? Well, I'm not going to go into detail because when we look at the proliferation of altcoins and blockchains, we're going to have to talk about wallets there. But basically, a wallet is where you store your crypto. There's three kinds of wallets. One of them is on the exchange. You can actually hold your money on the exchange. Problems with that and virtues with that. Then there's the browser wallet, which is what MetaMask is. And then there's the hard wallet, which is an actual, like an external drive. So we'll talk about that when we deal with the altcoins and the proliferation of blockchains. Suffice to say, they're kind of a pain in the posterior, as I said. The one that I like to use most is actually called Solflare, and it's on the Solana blockchain. And I use Solette also. There's Phantom, there's a number of them. But yeah, it's what I'm talking about when I say that crypto is still not for the faint of heart. There's a learning curve, and you have to just be prepared for it and then go at it. But when you do, as I said, it's very rewarding. I've done quite well, and I really enjoy it. Plus, it's just a fascinating phenomenon. But again, the wallets are a pain. So now let's look at how Ethereum is addressing those issues that we discussed. So let's look at gas fees. Well, first of all, they have the layer 2 solutions that we've mentioned. These are separate blockchains with their own token and protocols that nonetheless can be integrated within the layer 1 blockchain, which is in the case of Ethereum, it's Ethereum itself. These chains will take the load off the Ethereum chain. That is, process a transaction off of Ethereum process and complete the transaction off-chain, and then reintegrate the results into the Ethereum blockchain. By dividing up the hash power in this way, the Layer 2 chain can charge far less for gas fees to its users. These layers can also host computer power-hungry apps such as gaming and metaverses and make those processes faster and less expensive. The first and best known of the Layer 2 solutions for Ethereum is Polygon, and its coin is called Matic. It used to be Polygon and Matic were two separate companies, and so Polygon is now the Layer 2 blockchain, and Matic is its currency. It can process many different kinds of transactions for far lower gas fees, and gaming and metaverses are two of its primary focuses. Right now, the well-known Metaverse Sandbox is heavily involved in a partnership with Polygon. The Sandbox Metaverse itself is still on Ethereum, but it has transferred some of its processing onto Polygon. It plans to make a migration to it in the future. We'll see how that works out. Now let's look at the environmental issue. Ethereum 2.0 is a transition away from proof of work to proof of stake. Now, what is proof of stake? Again, it's one of those things that we'll cover in the next discussion. So suffice to say here that it's a way to ensure blockchain security and processing in a way that requires far less computational power. This, in turn, is far less stressful on the environment, or so the argument goes. Before we cover proof of stake, or POS, we need to consider some incidents that have occurred with Ethereum that will put this move to POS into a greater context. This, in turn, will lead us directly to proof of stake and the Cardano and Polkadot blockchains that will be taken up in the next discussion. Now, keep in mind that the gas fees problem has not been solved by the Layer 2 solutions, because not all of the operations are done on the Layer 2 solutions, right? Only certain ones. And so the rest of the dApps, the rest of the processes still can contain rather large gas fees. However, Ethereum is solving that. And that's what brings us here. And this next subject will actually cover a number of issues with Ethereum to show you just how innovative Vitalik really is. So now we get to the subject of hard forks. Hard forks are huge changes to the cryptocurrency in question. They change the cryptocurrency's protocols itself, rendering the older version of that protocol invalid. If it, the older version, continues to live on, it will result in a split from the new version. Ethereum has such examples, and we shall talk about them in the upcoming paragraphs. This material is taken from a number of sources, but the major one I have it listed below. So here are the three Ethereum hard forks: Ethereum Classic, Ethereum Zero, and Metropolis. These are the main three Ethereum hard forks, and we're going to talk a little bit about each one of them. So Ethereum Classic. This is the very first hard fork that Ethereum had. It is also the most controversial of all its hard forks. At a certain point in time, the development team behind Ethereum noticed that the decentralized autonomous organization, that's the DAO that we talked about, or a DAO, that Ethereum had been using was hacked. The decision to implement a hard fork that would restore all of the stolen crypto coins was swift, but it also received quite a bit of backlash. Ethereum supporters and enthusiasts divided into two camps. So you can understand that this DAO was composed of Ethereum supporters and enthusiasts. That's why it came to every public attention, and that's why it was so controversial. If it had just been the average person using it, it might not have. So the Ethereum supporters and enthusiasts divided into two camps. The first ones were happy that the team behind the cryptocurrency was going to take a quick action and not let such a thing pass. A hard fork would mean that the developers had learned their lesson and are now better prepared for similar future attempts of a hack or a breach. However, a lot of people didn't agree with the hard fork. They saw this change as a violation of the fundamental meaning of decentralized. This group of people believed that the only way to have a truly decentralized cryptocurrency was to not get involved and simply, they're putting like go with the flow, whatever that means. Because as soon as the developers start taking action, this would cause a ripple effect and would become a real issue. In their minds, Ethereum should just have accepted the losses, reinforced the defenses, and continued on. They didn't think that the entire protocol should change. Ultimately, Ethereum's developers followed through with their decision to implement the hard fork. But what was the outcome? Well, the Ethereum cryptocurrency split into two. The majority of the people that didn't agree with the split ended up sticking to the old version of Ethereum, which is now known as Ethereum Classic. Today, there are still two camps of people in the cryptocurrency community. Some think that the developers were right to fix the problem as soon as possible, while others commend the people that stuck to their beliefs and are still supporting Ethereum Classic. So if you look on the exchanges, you can find Ethereum and Ethereum Classic. But when you hear, for instance, in the news, or you go, for instance, somebody announced Ethereum it's not Ethereum Classic. They're talking about the new Ethereum, the newer Ethereum. Now we get to Ether Zero, another hard fork. Ether Zero is another well-known Ethereum fork. It's not as extreme as Ethereum Classic. This one is aimed towards improvement rather than a revolution. Ether Zero aimed to improve the transaction rate speeds that occur within the Ethereum network. Furthermore, this Ethereum fork is determined to make these transactions completely free. Eventually, obviously, because right now they're not free. So when it is accomplished, the users will definitely feel it for the better. So this is the hard fork. Major protocol changes. Those who have been dealing with Ethereum for some time now have probably noticed lower gas fees and faster, smoother transactions. But in the short time that I've been involved, to me, and most people that I know, the fees are still very high, and I have nothing to compare them to, so I don't know. So that's all I can say about that. Now we get to Metropolis. It's a fork. Metropolis is the current Ethereum fork. This fork wasn't created because of any extreme situations. It's part of a plan to improve the existing Ethereum blockchain. Metropolis is composed of three phases. The phase of Byzantium is considered to have ended. Constantinople is currently the active one. I like this sense of history. I like that. There are a couple of key features that the Metropolis Ethereum fork aims to improve. First of all, during the extent of the Ethereum Metropolis fork, a lot of the privacy-related features will get an overhaul. The current privacy settings and options that the Ethereum network has aren't at all bad, but the new features will be up to date and will guarantee greater privacy during transactions. The whole privacy thing and government regulations that are starting to infringe upon the crypto, that's quite a subject right there. And in fact, verifying who you are is called Know Your Customer, KYC. This is one of those processes that I've talked about that can be a real pain. So anyways, Ethereum's working on all this. Another huge change that the Ethereum Metropolis fork aims to implement is its proof of stake consensus-based system instead of the current proof of work. Again, this is all I'm going to say about proof of stake because I'll be covering it in the next discussion. So let's quickly do an overview of the Ethereum Metropolis fork's phases. Byzantium was a phase which aimed to make the Ethereum platform more secure and better optimized. This was done one step at a time, but the initial goal was to make the network safer and more fluid to use. Again, if you were using Ethereum, you didn't notice this. This all been done behind the scenes. Then Constantinople, this aims to finish off the processes of Byzantium and then concentrate on one big goal, to prepare Ethereum blockchain for the transition between proof of work and proof of stake. This is a huge goal in and of itself and will require quite some time to be fully set into motion. Then we have the Serenity hard fork. The Ethereum Serenity is considered to be the last big step in Ethereum's development. Serenity is dedicated to one goal and one goal only, to transition the Ethereum blockchain from proof of work to proof of stake. And this will end up being Ethereum 2.0. It's the completion of the Serenity project. Needless to say, this is a hard fork. Okay, so recall our discussion on Bitcoin mechanics. That 15,000 network of computers hashing away to process and mint the Bitcoin. Ethereum has something comparable. That's proof of work. All that will dramatically change in this massive shift to proof of stake. And for the miners, there's a lot at stake. This could be a real problem. It might have its benefits. Again, it's an entirely different discussion. So this is what I mean by how visionary and fearless Vitalik is. Again, I say he's like Elon Musk. He's risking everything on this move. So let's see how it turns out. The latest word on the transition is that it will take place sometime around June of 2022. That's this year. So let's summarize the issues that Ethereum is dealing with. High gas fees that increase when the system gets bottlenecked. some breaches in security, and the environmental issue. And we've just covered how Ethereum is addressing these issues, and they are, and it's massive. So we have just gone through a relatively brief equivalent of the Bitcoin mechanics and Bitcoin history discussions that I did previously, only we've done it now for Ethereum. I hope to have shown just what a technological revolution, and even more importantly, a potential social and economic revolution, the Ethereum blockchain represents for the world. Socioeconomics. Remember what Marxism promised the world, but to do it was to reduce humanity to nothing but the result of socioeconomic processes. Our very consciousness as human beings was theoretically reduced to socioeconomic processes glued together by narratives. What a demeaning prism to view humanity through. And worse still, it is the function of government to govern those socioeconomic processes, to regulate, control, and engineer, and with that, our very consciousness. The government in charge of regulating the way we think, how we see ourselves as human beings. This is not an exaggeration. It's exactly what is going on. This is the rationale behind the Marxist death of the individual. Blockchain technologies are delivering the promise of socioeconomic revolution, but to enhance, not efface, the individual. But this is a good moment to also stop briefly and ask a question. Why do so many developers and investors still choose to integrate their applications and projects onto Ethereum? Gas fees are still extremely high. It could crash and burn sometime this year if Ethereum 2.0 were to fail or even stumble. People now have options. Again, I'll mention like the blockchain Solana we've mentioned. 2.5 times the speed of Visa, much lower gas fees. And yet programmers and developers still flock to Ethereum. Look at OpenSeas. This is the largest NFT platform, in the crypto world. Absurd gas fees. It's the number one platform with all its problems, and it's been having some problems. Not due to Ethereum, though. Massive sales volume, around $3.5 billion. There are entire blockchains that don't do that much volume. And this is just one application on Ethereum. So why then? Why do people in the crypto space still flock to Ethereum? Obviously, the power and security of Ethereum's virtual machine is one central reason. It's a proven entity, and it has the first mover advantage. But I think it's more than that. I think it's just as much that people and institutions have faith in Vitalik Buterin. The difference one individual can make is extraordinary. This is why the founding fathers of the great American experiment, while creating a system of equality under the law, equal representation, as equal as possible, were just as focused on equal opportunity, not equality of outcomes. They always were focused on the individual. Individual freedom, individual autonomy is central. Why? Well, Christianity comes into play as a fundamental value, whether you are a believer or not. Each individual has an eternal soul. The decisions of the individual affect their eternal destiny. The individual can affect eternity. It's a monstrous responsibility, whether you believe it or not. It places the responsibility of one's actions squarely on the shoulders of the individual, not the collective. Rather than efface the individual into a collective project, the great American experiment places the individual squarely in the center. To me, it's Christianity plus rational enlightenment. And whereas we leave aristocratic culture behind, we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, as the saying goes. Aristocratic culture cultivated the individual achievement and virtues, albeit it was focused on the aristocracy. The Enlightenment extended those virtues to the common man and ushered in the scientific revolution at the same time. Christianity developed the moral framework and values that have guided the individual and our institutions. So whether or not we are overtly Christians, we nonetheless are the product of 2,000 years of evolution of Christian values. And as we see with the Marxists, the socialists, you have the tiniest possible elites the world has ever known with the greatest concentration of power. I've laid that out in a lot of previous videos, so I won't beat the dead horse here. But with this, we have to say, and make this really clear, because some people are uncomfortable with it, there are individuals who are simply born to lead the way. And the best, most exciting societies need to always be able to recognize them, appreciate them, but most importantly, if they don't help them, then at least get out of their way. Give them their due respect, because we're not all the same. Equal under the law, but not equal otherwise. So the implications of what has been accomplished between Bitcoin and Ethereum cannot be overstated. The fundamental structures are now in place for a completely different financial system that has never before manifested in all of human history. It is a vision of an economic system that will benefit every person who engages with it. The individual will own a part of the economic system, a system that is designed to benefit the common man, not just the elites who manipulate it, as is with fiat. If you follow Vitalik, you can see that he is committed to this. Even though only a small portion of the world's population is currently directly engaged in the crypto system, large institutions and even entire nations are starting to adopt cryptocurrencies to one degree or another. Public awareness has suddenly exploded, seemingly out of nowhere. Notice that in the last Super Bowl, no less, what is one of the most massively viewed events in American culture, there were 5 crypto-related commercials. Crypto.com, which started on Ethereum, FTX, which is an exchange, Coinbase, it's an Ethereum-based, though it's very centralized, it uses the Polygon 2 layer. Binance, which is an entire cryptocurrency, crypto blockchain, and eToro, which is an exchange. That doesn't even include the fact that Snoop Dogg, the star of the halftime performance, is himself a high-profile celebrity at the cutting edge of the NFTs and Metaverse space. He owns a large gaming estate in the Sandbox Metaverse. If you would have told anyone just last year that such a thing was going to happen, they would have laughed. If they even knew what you were talking about. Crypto what? Sandbox? Today, if a person chooses to and makes the effort, that person can exist financially almost entirely within the crypto space. Credit cards, crypto IRAs, we have them, crypto savings accounts, crypto investment accounts. All of this was made possible by the emergence of Ethereum, and to a large extent to the vision and brilliance of one young man who is still in his 20s. Think of it. Thousands of years of economic development is suddenly beginning to become completely upended, reversed, over the span of a few decades between the advent of Bitcoin and the emergence of Ethereum. This is why I'm claiming that the great reversal that was ignited by the American Revolution is now being accelerated by the crypto blockchain revolution. And make no mistake, the centralizing empires represented by the English throne and the Anglican Church that the American Revolution had to contend with at that time are alive and well today in the newer form of global socialism. The fascist wedding of communism and fiat banking, or fiat capitalism, which was the real goal of all communism from the very start. It's getting worse. It's here today. It's getting worse. As I've said many times, Marx was a rat, and he and his successors have suckered millions, not to mention they instigated every genocide of the 20th century. And left unchecked, there will be more genocides to come in the 21st century. And we are now witnessing those forces rising up before our very eyes. Global fascism isn't even trying to hide itself anymore. You've at least heard of the Great Reset, right? You will owe nothing, but you'll be happy. That's the Davos Project. Yeah, you'll owe nothing and you'll be happy because you'll also be stupid. Our education system will take care of that. And as Klaus Schwab, the leader of the Davos Project, let us know, quote, "We have penetrated into institutions and governments all over the world," unquote. He's bragging about that. And one of his shiny disciples is none other than that fascist clown, Justin Trudeau. But the great reversal, thanks to a large extent to the emergence of the blockchain technologies, has just been accelerated. So don't lose faith in the great American experiment. It's still alive and well, and all over the world. as those excellent truckers in Canada reminded us of. And by the way, did I mention defund the universities? Defund PBS? Defund NPR? Defund the Democratic Party? Defund the government?